Sahana bhavatu sahano punaktu sah viryam karavavahai तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. We're doing the big GD, right? Question.
Yes, Shankiti. So group number one, Deepraj was the monitor, so you can Deepraj.
One moment. One moment. I'm just sharing it. One second.
Okay, so group one, I was the monitor and questionnaire, and the other members were Meera, Anvesh, and Prashant. The question was, why do most people pursue external happiness? The answer we all came to was most people seek happiness in the external world because one, ignorance. Most people don't know that happiness is within, and in their ignorance, they keep seeking happiness in the external world. And two, force of habit. Even among people who are acquainted with the idea that high happiness is within, they still pursue external happiness because to move from the previous state to the new state requires a lot of effort. Thus, only a few people who have both the knowledge and are willing to put in the effort pursue happiness internally.
Okay, interesting. The traditional answer to this question is why? But before we even go into the answer, let us just pause a second and think about this. Can you just put the question again, please? Why do most people pursue external happiness? So, as a group, when you put a question like this, you must know that there is no such thing as external happiness. Happiness is always internal because you can't feel happiness outside, right? You're always feeling it inside. So, you could put the question as why do most people pursue happiness in the external world? That's acceptable. And the way you've answered the question, you're answering that question. So why do, if your question is why do most people pursue external happiness, if this is the question, then well, most people don't pursue external happiness. In fact, nobody pursues external happiness because there's no such thing. How can you have happiness outside? Happiness is always inside. But you have assumed the question to be why do most people pursue happiness from external sources? So, since you made that assumption, why don't you write the question like that? Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is you have got an interesting answer that it's because of ignorance, and people don't know that you have to seek it within. See, people don't know that happiness is within, and they keep seeking happiness in the external world. Okay, I think everybody knows that happiness is within because they never find it outside. Most people don't know that happiness is gained by seeking within, would be a more a correct way of looking at it, maybe. You may think that I'm unnecessarily splitting hairs, but please note that precise thinkers must be precise writers. One day you will start writing, and a person reading it will have no understanding of what you just said. And therefore, they will memorize it and repeat what you said. And over a period of time, the knowledge will be lost. So please say what it means. Say what you mean, say all that you mean, and say nothing more than what you mean. So most people don't know that happiness is within. No, everybody knows happiness is within. How can it be outside? So most people don't know that happiness is to be pursued within. And in their ignorance, they keep seeking happiness in the external world. Okay, an interesting answer. Then the second one is, okay, so even if you know, even then you continue pursuing it outside because of the force of habit. Okay, so this is an interesting answer. However, the traditional answer to this question is, why do people seek happiness in the external world? Because they find it there. Isn't it? You eat an ice cream, you find happiness. You say, get up in the morning and study. What happiness are you going to find? You tell somebody, get up at 4 o'clock, he'll run away from you. You can remove this from the thing, Mahesh. Thank you. So, let's see everybody. Gallery view. Okay. So, why do you pursue it outside? Because you find it there. That's your experience, right? Your experience is, if somebody speaks to me sweetly, I feel happy. That's your experience. So you obviously go for it. You touch something hot. You touch a hot tawa. It's hot. Your hand will withdraw. You touch something mentally which is not pleasurable. Your mind will withdraw. That is the normal experience. So the answer to that question really is because when you pursue it externally, you get instant gratification. You find that happiness immediately. Now, the problem with finding that happiness immediately is that happiness which you initially find is no longer there, but you keep on hunting for it there. And you repeat that because you've already got that happiness. So you say, I already got it in this manner, so let me just do more and I'll get some more. No, it's gone. And it ain't coming back. So why do we pursue happiness in the external world? In 2 words, the answer is instant gratification. Explanation of that answer is because this is what you have found, that by contacting that thing, you feel happy. So you continue going there. So what is the solution to this is knowledge. But you have taken ignorance as the cause. I mean, if you take ignorance as the cause, then everything will come under that. I mean, you can answer any question like that, right? So what is the cause? Because that's your experience of instant joy. That is why we pursue it like this. Is that fine? We can wait a second. Taruna, you can finish what you were writing.
I'm done. Thank you. So, there were 4 members in our group, myself, the monitor, Jayashree as the questioner, and Bharat and Tisha. So the question was, what is the role of complete surrender, Sharanagati, in the context of Advaita Vedanta, and how does it contribute to spiritual growth and the realization of non-duality? Can surrender coexist with the pursuit of knowledge in the path of self-realization? There was no consensus to the answer.
Oh. So what is the role of complete surrender in the context of Advaita Vedanta? How does it contribute to spiritual growth and the realization of non-duality? What is the role of complete surrender in the context? How does it contribute? And does it coexist with the pursuit of knowledge in the path to self-realization? Okay, so Mahesh, can you remove this so that I can see the people? Right, Jayashree, your question, right? All right. So Jayashree will begin dealing with this question by defining what is surrender. Once you know what is surrender, then you can go to complete surrender. What is surrender? Surrender is what you have in areas of ignorance. When you have a stomach ache and you do not know what is the cause of the stomach ache, you go to the doctor and surrender to him and say, please tell me, why is my stomach hurting and what am I supposed to do about it? So wherever we are ignorant, we surrender. Surrender meaning we stop using our small intellect in that area. What is the role of this in the spiritual path? You cannot have the spiritual path without it because the entire thing is unknown. How are you going to imagine what it is to be when you're not what you think you are? So the whole thing is complete surrender. You can't have a spiritual path without surrender. The whole thing is unknown anyway. The path itself is mysterious. Right? How does this fit with Advaita Vedanta? This is what Advaita Vedanta says. As you know, I'm merely a tape recorder. I'm only telling you what Advaita Vedanta says. This is what Vedanta says. That surrender is what you have in areas of ignorance. Now you have to ask yourself, how many areas are within our knowledge? And when we start looking at it like that, we find that not even 0.00001 is within our knowledge. What do we know? For instance, today you came to Mayfair Heritage, right? You came up by the lift. How do you know that that lift was, all the wires and all the connections were working properly? You didn't know that. Did you go and investigate that lift before entering it? I don't want to frighten you unnecessarily, but how do you know that thing works? So that is the surrender you have. That I assume that it is working because it is in a building, and because all the circumstantial evidence you have, you decided that this lift is working. Not because you had any knowledge on this issue. Right? When you rang the bell, you just press something. How do you know that that thing will make a sound? So life is a continuous surrender because we're constantly in the unknown realm, constantly. Some people look at walls in their house and say, oh, I don't want this wall, isko hata do. When they function like this, that means they function without surrender, the building collapses. Because it has removed a wall, how can you do that? You have to ask the architect, is this wall removable? Right? So how does it play with Advaita Vedanta? Completely, because this is the stance of Advaita, that everything that we do is in the realm of the unknown, and therefore total Sharanagati. In fact, one of the expressions of this is one of the most famous sayings of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Karmanyavadhakaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Your right is an action, but not the fruit. Because the fruit, whether you should get it, whether it will be in your welfare, whether this will bring that fruit, none of this is within our realm of knowledge. You may work very hard to get something and get it, but that thing may not be in your welfare after. So don't worry about the fruit. Just action, 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 action. And that's one of the manifestations of surrender. I'm not interested in the fruit because it's unknown. So the philosophy rests on that. So what is its role in Advaita Vedanta? The philosophy talks about our realms of ignorance, and therefore many of its precepts are based on this concept. How does it help you realize the self? Because the diametric opposite of Sharanagati is the ego. So, ego. So, the moment you're able to say, okay, fine, I don't think I know this, let me take advice, let me take suggestions, whatever, whichever way it manifests in you, let me not worry about what I'm getting. So many different ways this can manifest. All of it give rise to reduction of ego. Because I am so great and I know everything and I will tell you what to do. All of that goes. Have I covered all of them? Let's put the questions back on. Mahesh, you'll put it back on. What is the role of complete surrender in the context of Advaita Vedanta? How does it contribute to spiritual growth and realization of non-duality? Is that, have we covered all of this to your satisfaction? Right? Can surrender coexist with the pursuit of knowledge in the path to self-realization? Covered? In fact, the thing is, in the path, in the pursuit of knowledge, even if you're not pursuing spiritual growth, just the pursuit of knowledge, you find out that how much of ignorance you are in. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything yet. Remember that Newton, he found the laws of motion. And he says, I'm like a child picking up pebbles on the seashore of knowledge while the whole vast ocean stays all undiscovered before me. So the more you pursue knowledge, any knowledge, doesn't mean spiritual or other, begin to see how much you don't know. Okay, so surrender is the recognition of your ignorance and the unwillingness to take decisions and actions in that area. And this is all the base for all the other questions. The more knowledgeable you are, the more you understand what you don't know. So you don't go interfere in that.
So, ma'am, the more you pursue the knowledge, the more the intensity of your surrender increases.
Correct.
Can you say?
Yes, because your recognition of ignorance increases. Like now you have an MA in yoga. They ask you, how much of yoga do you know, Taruna? What will you say?
Just the periphery of it.
And you got a postgraduate. But somebody who does a 6-month course on it will say, I come, I will teach you yoga. Because the less the knowledge, the more you believe you can, you know it. So as
Right.
knowledge grows. Post-graduation in yoga is not, I mean, it's a certain degree of knowledge, right? But you feel no, you feel
Like it's just
reticent
an
to say.
introduction to the subject and various subjects along with just an introduction.
Mhm.
Even in the PhD, you learn very less about a particular subject.
Yes, in PhD you don't learn anything at all. So you learn very, very little about a very, very small portion.
Yes.
So, uh, so the more knowledge grows, the more stable the personality becomes. The better your decisions grow because you know where you can decide and where you cannot. Bharat?
Yeah, so Jankiji, on the spiritual path, if one has grown to, let's say, 60%, so 60% is the conviction that he has, and the 40% will be the balance surrender that he'll need to have. So, in that sense, surrender has decreased, right? His knowledge has increased.
No. When he's at 60%, he will think his surrender will be 60%. Because his comprehension of the whole is only 60%, right? So his surrender will also be that much only. His surrender is not on that 40%. His surrender is directly proportional to reduction of ego. No? So you're saying he's grown to 60%. That means his surrender is 60%. His recognition of his own ignorance is 60%. His recognition of his non-comprehension is 60%.
I'll think about it. Thank you.
Yes, Mahesh?
Yeah, I guess most people apply surrender to, so they interpret that verse which you just quoted about right to action and not to the fruits, as though the fruit is something that is given by God and they surrender to the God's will. There's a Krishna as in particular, and they're surrendering. It is his sort of prasad that we accept, and so is that a valid way of looking at it, that there is a God who is sort of deciding what the fruit of that particular action is?
See, every way is wrong. When you say God is deciding the fruit of action, what is this God supposed to mean? It is the unknown. So the way you have put it is the way a bhakta puts it. The way a jnani puts it is saying, you don't know. The way the bhakta puts it as God knows. So they're both the same thing, because you don't know God. So if God knows, how is that benefiting you anyway? So I don't know how this fruit came. I don't know what are all the factors by which the fruit comes. Jnani. God makes the fruit come. Bhakta. But they're both saying exactly the same thing. So it is a valid way, yes, to answer your question. It is completely valid, and it is exactly the same as what Advaita Vedanta says.
No, in the case of jnani, not knowing all factors could also be a materialist. I mean, you could be an atheist and have that view, because the factors are huge, we don't know. Whereas accepting as a prasad is a different thing, because it's sort of you feel more contented.
Mahesh, you have been saying this for 20 years now. And 20 years I'm telling you the same thing. It is the same thing. Whether you say God knows or whether you say I don't know, the sum total is the same. Because God is unknown to you. So you've always had this problem that you feel the bhakta and the jnani are always saying different things. No, they're all saying the same thing. One says it prosaic, one says it poetic. That's the only difference. And we will say something like a man minus human minus desires is equal to God. So boring, right? But the bhakta will say it in poetry. So bhakta has very interesting ways of putting it, but they're saying exactly this. And since you're never going to believe me, let me quote your favorite. Swami Vivekananda said about Sri Ramakrishna that he is the greatest jnani I met. Right? How can Vivekananda talk about Sri Ramakrishna, who is a bhakta by everybody's standards and self-professed? Everybody says he's a bhakta. He himself says he's a bhakta. But Swami Vivekananda says, no, he's a jnani. Are jabardasti. Why is he saying jabardasti? Jabardasti. I'm saying I'm bhakta. You're calling me a jnani. Because the vision of the jnani and the vision of the bhakta is exactly the same. If you understand any one of them, you understand the other.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Because
what
there
can
are
you
enough
say?
other quotes which show differences.
Okay.
But I mean,
Yes,
I
now you
personally
have
go
to
on it.
decide, right, which one you're going to. You've been sitting on the fence on this for 20 years. Now you take a call. According to you, do you buy into the idea that all great people speak exactly the same truth? Or do you not buy into that? That is a decision you have to personally take.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I attend, to sort of resolve that question, because when I read, there seems to be very diverse sort of viewpoints. But that's straying away. I'm fine. I mean, in sense, yeah. What you said. Thank you.
So, only 2 questions or anything else?
No, only 2.
And I have next. Can I ask next question?
Sure.
Ma'am, we say desire is a cause of agitation. And can we use the word expectation and desire interchangeably?
Yes.
Uh,
In most contexts, yes.
Right.
When you go into deeper philosophy, in our desire and be expressed in so many different things, likes and dislikes, expectations, whims and fancies, it becomes so many. But in normal parlance, yes.
Okay. So my question is, just a distinction is that suppose we desire money and we work for it and we expect a result which is money. So desire is pre-action and expectation is post-action. Means
Why
when you
before you were expecting the money, no?
means you desire and you don't work, so you will not get the result. In that sense, you are expecting the result, and then if we use these things interchangeably, then we can say that expectation could also be the cause of agitation.
Yes.
But if we make the right expectation, because when we say we should use our intellect, and it is to that precision that you know what exactly you will be getting. So how come they be the first thing is that how can they be the cause of agitation? Also, if that be so, how to work without expectation?
Okay, so here, when you start questioning, then the problem with desire and expectation, all this start problem. But as far as the first part is concerned, that right expectation. So, right expectation in terms of desire is an intellect directed desire. When your intellect directs your desire, then in terms of expectation, it would become right expectation. Because remember, a desire cannot make you achieve. When your intellect directs that desire, then you achieve. If your intellect is not directing the desire, you will be living in your own dream world.
Right. So, in the last class, I asked a question: when you work for a whole month and you expect a salary, so it could be a cause of. Then the answer was, how can we be expecting that we get the salary? Also, when you work in a relationship with the best of your efforts, and then you expect something, so how come even the logical expectation, or then in that case, how are they wrong? Means when you work towards it, despite
Yeah,
that.
it's wrong because result is never in your hand. Anything can happen, right? You could work the whole month and the company could close. It can happen. You don't know suddenly when these guys were working at Lehman Brothers or something, they didn't know what was going on. Suddenly they were out of a job. I don't know if they got any money at the end of it. So, when we're saying don't expect it at the end, means don't work for the salary. Work for a cause. Work because you are contributing. Work because you're helping the organization grow or the country grow or whatever it is, the the idea behind it is. So when you direct your desire, okay, so whatever the desire, you direct it with your intellect, then in terms of expectation, it becomes right expectation. If you direct the desire with your intellect in terms of achievement of goals, then you start planning and working correctly. When you direct your desire with reference to relationships with your intellect, then you are quite attuned to what the other person is saying or feeling or thinking, rather than simply what I want. What do you mean what you want? If you're living with a, I don't know, with a toad, he's not suddenly going to sing like Lata Mangeshkar. You have to know what is that person all about.
Right. That's what I meant by having a logical or reasonable expectation, knowing what the other person
Yeah, but
is.
you're calling getting the salary, or because I did my part of the relationship properly, therefore it will work. You're calling all this logical. That's where the problem lies. It's not logical. Logical means you are predetermining that if I did everything properly, everything will work out well. That's not correct, is it? Thousands of people have the best of intentions and do good things. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
Now we are trying to set up the Vedanta universe.
Mhm.
You're working, Jayashree is working, everybody's working so hard to do something or the other. Now we are doing all we could. Does this mean that we'll take for granted that the university will come? We don't know. We are doing our best. We are thinking carefully and doing everything we can do. Will the university come? Ishwar Ichha. So there's no logical correlation between the fact that I am working and a desired result at a particular point has to come. There is no such correlation. People work on their health. I mean, so many of these healthy, so-called healthy people, they just pop off, suddenly.
Mhm.
They worked on their health. They did everything they should be doing. But there is the burden of the past. So how can you say? Suppose they were just born with some particular genetics. So what are they going to do beyond the point? So you have to understand what is within your control and what is not within your control. You can't say I did it right, therefore. There's no rule like that. Imagine that a person wanted to be very grateful to his wife and wanted to give her the best holiday ever, and so he took her uh, maybe to see the cherry blossoms in Japan, and he just organized everything beautifully. He got the best hotels, the best beaches, the best everything. They reached Japan, they were on the beach, and the tsunami hit. Now, what is the logical argument over here? The tsunami cannot hit because I'm taking care of my wife. ऐसे नहीं होता ना.
Mhm.
जो होगा सो होगा. I mean, that's that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jankichi,
Yeah.
how do you then explain the fact that 99% of the time, I'm just quoting an empirical figure, you will get your salary, you will see the cherry blossoms if you have, by and large, taken a lot of correct decisions leading up to that. And you can then say, okay, I don't know everything, so I will expect that I will see the blossoms. But if it doesn't happen, I know there is a factor X and I will just accept it. So if you live with that outlook, how does that work? I mean, does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it has to work for the individual involved to keep him or her free of agitation. The fact is, it's an understanding of life. Just because we are trying to do something doesn't at all mean that that thing will get done. There is no guarantee that we have come with. I mean, I could be the world's best mother and still have a terrible child, isn't it? I could I could have been to Harvard and and I don't know, have a lot of money and invest it very well and study about it properly and have a great idea, and still my business could fail. There is no control like that we have over outcomes. That's what he says. Your right is not outcome. Forget about it. You just do the work. So then people say, oh, so depressing. If I'm not going to get it, then why should I do the work? Who said you're not going to get it? Nobody's saying you won't get it. You're just saying you're not guaranteed to get it. So then if I'm not guaranteed, then why should I do the work? Because the work is not meant to get you that result really. The work is meant to
Exhaust your desire.
to make you a certain type of person. It's meant for your edification. So you know what? I don't want edification. I want that object. If you have learned to do what you have to do, when you have to do it, as you have to do it, this very ability that you have gained, you will get your desired object. It's only a question of time. So that person that I've become, the one who has control over himself or herself, that person will be a benefit to himself and to everyone around. Is that fine?
Ma'am, you said if you know.
One second, just let me finish with Deepak
Sorry.
Sethi.
Yeah, sorry. So the solution then is one should absolutely rock solid buy into it that there is no guarantee because there is a factor X. And then lead your life with proper desires, intellect driven desires which are uplifting you. And then you go through life and you evolve as your desires drop off without any agitation in the meantime. So,
Yes,
so
and
two
also
things, you've
most
talked about independent happiness as the way forward. And independent happiness has these two elements. There is a factor X and you buy into it so that you are not agitated, either through the process or at not getting it. And secondly, you focus on the process, on how well are you doing it, and derive your joy from that. Work is joy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not based on knowledge. You've understood that it's not, you understand what is controllable and what is not controllable. You figured this out. Once you figured that out, you deal with the controllable.
Yeah, focus on the controllable. Yeah, thank you.
Taruna, do you have something on this? Or
No, just the same thing I wanted to ask in different words. So, yes, thank you.
Okay. Monisha, when we take a flight, we surrender the person who knows how to operate it or a doctor who operates. Does the pilot or surgeon have to take a stand or conviction that does the pilot or surgeon have to take a
I'm sorry, this was just, it's just on the ladder of when you were talking about ego and surrender.
Hmm.
In this ladder,
Hmm.
where does you said the last, it's the unknown factor. But if I go to, if I get on a flight,
Hmm.
I have surrendered to the pilot, who I presume has studied and is more knowledgeable about a flight than I am. So he's in charge of my
It's
life
not just
path.
more than you are, but is capable of flying that flight.
Correct. Yeah. So similarly, as a surgeon, right, when you're unwell and you go and he says, I will do this, and then your heart will get better, and so on and so forth. But in turn, what do they feel? Do they feel an ego that, yes, we are in charge of so many people or in charge of Manisha's heart? Or do they surrender to a higher being or power, saying that we will try doing our best, then the rest is up to fate or up to a higher level? Do they have an ego because they have people looking up to them or surrendering to them?
No, I mean, if they,
I say it as, because I'm a teacher. and I have my students who look at me, or like a mother who's teaching a child, are we supposed to also not be definitive in terms of saying, no, we can teach you, we are capable because we have the resources? Is that an ego, or is that saying that we don't know, but yet we're going to fly the plane? Like, what would be
I would get very frightened if my pilot said that. I would not
correct?
get on that right. Say, okay, fine.
Or
You
the
can-
surgeon, or a teacher, or anybody who is capable of imparting some wisdom or some
Yes.
skills.
Yeah. So let's just stick to the question. The question is that we surrender the doctor. What does the doctor surrender to? Does he need to surrender? The doctor or the pilot or the teacher or anyone who is knowledgeable naturally understands what they don't know. It is the direct result of knowledge. So it's not that they feel that, oh, I don't know how to fly this flight. It is that they understand that they know a certain degree of it, and that degree of knowing how to fly this may or may not cover every single contingency they're likely to meet. So therefore, they're always in touch with the ground, like the space guys, right? They go up, but there's always mission control telling them what to do. The guy who's gone up there doesn't always know what is to be done, and yet his role is very important because he has to decide and execute. So it is a recognition of ignorance more than anything else. So as a teacher, as a parent, you understand that you can do your very best for your teacher, for your students, for your children, but it's not necessary that they all come out the way you would have liked that to come out. And it is, especially as a teacher, that's quite humbling because you've done all you could, but it didn't work. So that humility that comes with is a manifestation of knowledge. So there's no question of no surrender as far as they are concerned. Now, how they word it in their own heads depends on whether they are a bhakta or a jnani. I hate to say this because I know my friend Mahesh will jump in again, but he will always have this problem that no, it should be a higher power. It doesn't matter whether you call it a higher power or you just say, I don't know. Because higher power also, I don't know. It works down to the same thing. So do they need to know about their ignorance? Well, if they are knowledgeable, they will know about their ignorance. It's like your doctor, your MBBS doctor. You go to him with a stomach ache. He does X, Y, Z. After some time, what does he tell you? Let's say your stomach ache didn't get better. What will he tell you?
This is another doctor, another gastroenterologist.
Yeah.
So he'll give you something that, in his knowledge on what you should do with your stomach.
Step by step. My MBBS doctor, my general physician, was not able to cure my stomach ache. What will he do? He will realize he's reached the end of what he knows how to
He'll
do.
refer you to a gastroenterologist.
Yeah,
Correct. To a specialist. I see.
Part
Okay.
of knowledge is knowing what you know and what you don't know.
Okay. And what you don't know, you refer to somebody who you feel would know.
Would know. Or if there's no such person, you know that, well, we don't know. Whatever.
Correct.
But your
Thank you.
recognition of your areas of known and unknown become clearer.
Correct. Thank you.
Do they have an ego or do they further surrender? Okay, we did that. Jai Shri connects to surrender to unknown, keep doing action. Correct. Yes. We just surrender, we recognize we don't know. So many things we don't know, we can't control. We are these tiny human beings floating around on some ball which is floating around the sun, which is itself floating around the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which is itself floating around something else. We're so tiny and so pathetic, and yet we say, I am doing this and I am doing that. Happily. The moment you recognize, firstly, this body, mind, intellect is very tiny and very pathetic. You recognize that. Now, what is this body, mind, intellect going to know? So, surrender eventually is this is all the self. There is nothing else. Because that's all pervading. This body, mind, intellect is nothing. What are we making such a fuss about it? Oh, I did this, I did that, I have to get this, I have to get that.
This is just off topic. There's a wonderful interview. Sunita Williams, she's this astronaut who's stuck in space and can't come back. And they were supposed to come back in 10 days. And now they're going to be there for 8-9 months. It's a wonderful interview that she has talked about how they perceive Earth. And she says all this fighting and all this land. She says you must all come into space and see how unimportant this is. You know, I'm stuck. I don't know whether I'll be brought back. It's a wonderful interview that she just conducted a few days ago on the unknown factor. It's brilliant. Totally off topic, but just based on not knowing answers and consequences.
It's not off topic, but the thing about knowledge is it reduces the need for somebody to actually say that because you got it, you understood. But yes, if for those who would be inspired by hearing that interview, please do listen to it because anything that moves us in that direction is very good. But the truth is that if you just study Vedanta on a daily basis, all this will just become clear. Study it. Yeah, Nilüfer, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I
think metaphor is dropped. Yeah, Nilüfer.
I'm so sorry, my connection is quite choppy. The best doctors say that they do not cure a patient. Sometimes a case is so simple and they're so confident and the patient dies. And sometimes a case is so complicated and they feel they can't do anything and the patient miraculously survives. So they say that it is not me who has cured the patient. It is a power beyond me which has done this.
Yes, that's right. So now, depending on how you look at it, you say there are so many unknown factors involved in a patient getting well, or you say God makes that happen. Whichever way it says the same thing. And it's a fact, right? On every single thing like that. Everything is quoted in the unknown. What can we for sure say around here? Can't say anything. Then what should we do? Whatever our discrimination best tells us, we do it. That's it. And we do it to the very, very best of our ability. Not like, oh, okay, since nothing is in my hand, I will do it. I'm going to go to the end of it, leave no stone unturned, knowing fully well that none of this necessarily guarantees anything.
Ma'am, just as Jnani says there are unknown factors and Bhakta says it's done by the God. So Bhakta also doesn't know who is God. As Jnani doesn't know, Bhakta is also. But how he's so sure, and it seems like he's very sure that everything is done by God.
Well, yeah. I mean, usually the less the knowledge, the greater the confidence.
Okay. So the true bhakta means a person, a bhakta of a higher level, he still doesn't know. Till he realizes he doesn't know, it's only the faith and intensity of emotion towards a single thought.
Yes, and also when he says that, when he says God does, it also means it's a it's a factually true statement, because every action that has been performed, or every thought that has ever been had, or every feeling, it is because of the self, right? If the self wasn't there, how would any of this happen? So it's a factually true statement that God does everything. It's like saying electricity does everything in all the electrical gadgets. So
So it is his or
factually
her
true statement.
experience.
Huh?
So it's the bhakta's experience. Means though it is factually correct, like Mirabai or something, bhakta of that level, if they see everything is done by God or everything is God, so it's they're talking through experience.
They're talking through experience, and it's also like a person whose thoughts is on money all the time. They will say कि ये सब पैसे करता है, पैसे होगा तो सब होगा. Okay, so whatever your thought is on, you will actually see that happening. If somebody has all the time thinks of knowledge, then they say knowledge makes everything happen. If somebody is thinking on emotions, they say प्यार से सब हो जाता. So our perception is really based on where my thoughts are. So his thoughts are on God, so that's what he perceives everyone in everything.
Right. Thank you.
Deepak Sethi, sorry, basic question. What's the definition concept of surrender that will answer all questions, doubts we are discussing? Definition or concept of surrender is when your intellect does not interfere in areas of unknown. That is called surrender. When you don't take decisions or actions in area of surrender, or in areas of ignorance. Sorry. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so if nobody has anything else, let's get back. Oh, sorry.
Ma'am, one more question about the surrender thing. In our discussion in the group, which when Bharat says in the areas where we have knowledge, in those areas we don't surrender. Means to the extent we gain knowledge, we surrender is not required. But in the spiritual field, this is not a subject of knowledge. So can we see it like that also, since this is not a subject of knowledge and intellect cannot be used. So here surrender is all the more required, or the intensity of surrender is all the more because
Why
this is
is
not a
it not?
subject of understanding.
Why not? What at the moment when you're understanding surrender, what are you doing? Aren't you trying to understand it? If you understand, don't think of fruit of action or desires cause agitation. Of course, it's a subject of your understanding. Why not? It is your knowledge, right?
Yeah. My point was that the self is not a subject of understanding. So in that context,
In that context, what?
in that context, the point that to the extent you gain knowledge, you don't need surrender. So since this is not a subject of knowledge,
No, how can you say both? If you're talking
okay.
self, then it's like a switch, on or off.
Okay.
So if you're saying self, right? Because either you know the self or you don't know the self. There's nothing else there. But if you're talking about degrees, that means as you're approaching the self, then
Okay.
the picture changes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so where were we? We were discussing how happiness is a comparative state. You feel happy or don't feel happy based on what was your previous experience. Simple example, I think they're there in the book. You put your hand in ice water, and then you put it in normal water, and the normal water will seem hot. You put your hand in hot water, and then you put it in normal water, and that same water will seem cold. So happiness is a comparative state. That's what we were studying. Where have we reached? Okay, shall we continue? We've got only 6 minutes left, so there's no points, I suppose, starting to read the text. So anyone has anything else to say?
Sorry, Janki, now that we have this time, just to build on what you said, we believe we know something, X, let's say. That doesn't mean that we know it as the truth, but we think we know. There, we will use our intellect because that's in our known area, even though our understanding may be in the ultimate analysis incorrect. Where we know that we don't know, that is where surrender comes in, because you don't then try and dabble your intellect in areas of your known areas of your ignorance, right? Would that be the right way to describe?
Initially, yes. But eventually, even in your so-called areas of known, you also know up to what you know in that area. Like we can take the example of the surgeon or the doctor or the pilot or the person in space. They know that, okay, this is a problem I can't handle. So even if you're a pilot, you may tell what is that, the ground control that,
Mission
okay,
control.
Yeah.
Ground control.
That, okay, I have engine failure, I don't know what to do, tell me what to do, or whatever, I don't know, whatever problems they have. Or I need your help in doing X, Y, and Z. I need you to clear out the thing, whatever you require from them. So as you become better and better, you become more proficient in knowledge, you understand how much of that you really know. So initially, you can take the stance that, okay, I think I know this. But proficiency in knowledge is really knowing the part which you know and knowing the part which you don't know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant. Because as a pilot also, I know that I can handle 5 situations. I know that I can't handle a situation where there is lightning and there is velocity or wind at a certain level. So that, to my mind, while I know flying, that's an area unknown to me, and I will not dabble into it with my intellect. I'll surrender to, in this case, ground control.
Yes. Or I will say that today weather conditions are not such under which I know how to fly.
Yes. So that actually answers Bharat's question that as your knowledge increases, perceived knowledge, in this case, having a certain proficiency, then to that extent, your need for surrender decreases. But as your knowledge increases, you also realize all that you don't know. In that sense, the need for surrender increases. So at the end of it all, more knowledge can lead to higher levels of surrender required. And more knowledge can also lead for lower levels of surrender required, depending upon the context in which we are looking at this. So that may just explain.
Yes. So that little portion in which you know, so you don't need surrender. But your expansion of vision is seeing how much you don't know.
Yeah,
So
which comes with your knowledge. And when you have authentic knowledge and you have that will to, when you're really imbibing that knowledge in the right sense per se, not with hubris, etc.
Yes. Okay, so that's it for today. We will continue next time. All the volunteers